Kelsey, I can't believe we're finally getting to do this. Thank you for your patience in allowing us the time to set this up and make this happen. If you wouldn't mind, could you do an introduction?
Sure. My name is Kelsey Buchalter. I'm 29 years old, born and bred Cape Townian, and just a human trying to navigate this thing called life.
Let's start with the idea that a lot of people don't realize, in the modern sense, given our landscape online and our physical interactions, that eating disorders are still a really big part of the psychology of not only young girls, but women and men. Could you just walk us through the door of where we are right now in the modern sense? What's happening within the landscape of eating disorders? How does it affect people?
Well, I think you don't have to turn a very far corner to see that it's very prevalent nowadays. I think it's been increasing. Any human in this world can be susceptible to anxiety and insecurity and fear, etc. But as a society, I think we're kind of in the messy middle, because for a lot of things right now, especially in the mental health space, there's just a lot of speculation and we can't really prove causation for a lot of things. Of course, I have found some things that have been revelatory and really hopeful in my journey of, healing, but we don't really have a hard cut, black and white, this is what causes anorexia, this is what anorexia or bulimia is. If I just had to zoom out, and again, I'm 29 and I've spent most of my life trying to figure this out, at the end of the day, I just see it as neuroinflammation, biologically speaking. And in that regard, mental health, any diagnosis, I feel like diagnoses of I understand the use of them, and of course it's very important to diagnose and put a cluster of things together, but I see mental health on a spectrum. We all are humans susceptible to fear, anxiety, depression. Those are all normal human feelings to feel. I often think that diagnoses are a little bit, not unnecessary, but just, when someone's diagnosed by a doctor or someone in a white coat or a therapist, it's very easy to take that diagnosis on. But my biggest motto, and something that just drives me every single day, is the body does have an innate ability to heal itself when put in an environment to do so. And that, I find, is much more empowering, as opposed to being told, oh, you've got depression, you've got generalized anxiety disorder, you've got an eating disorder, you're diagnosed, and you take that on. That was me for many, many years, until, I suppose, the last 7-8 years.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
People don't understand necessarily the difference between anorexia and bulimia. Now, walk us through the door. What is the distinction?
Well, I think we should even define anorexia, because you can get anorexia nervosa and you can also get anorexia somatica. Both of them leave one in the same place. You restrict food intake and therefore you lose a lot of weight and you become underweight. So anorexia nervosa definitely, as the name implies, it relates to the nervous system. So the psychological, almost like psychotic element of why you're restricting food. And in that regard, an example could be you restrict food because you feel that you need to look a certain way in order to be worthy in the world. That's one that I very much resonate with. But then you also get anorexia somatica, and that's in the context of someone, let's say they get an illness or, God forbid, cancer or stomach bug, and they just lose their appetite. And due to that illness or whatever's happening on physiologically speaking, they actually don't have an appetite. So one of them is kind of biologically mediated, whereas the other one is more self-inflicted. And then you get bulimia nervosa versus bulimia somatica. Somatica would be you're not actually forcing yourself to purge. And purging can look like vomiting, but it can also look like over-exercising or the use of laxatives. So that would be the bulimia nervosa, where you're purposely inflicting yourself to purge. And again, it could be by exercise or laxatives or legitimately vomiting. So the difference between anorexia and bulimia, hopefully I've covered.
I'm still a little confused. I am. Yeah. What is the single biggest distinction? Is anorexia not necessarily involving purging?
Yes, technically, yes. But in real practice, often it does.
Okay.
In clinical practice, it does. But for the use of technical terms, anorexia is basically the restriction of food intake. Right. Either suppressing your appetite purposely or just your body suppressing your appetite naturally. And then bulimia is a purge. It's a purging of some kind, and the typical is vomiting, so making yourself vomit, or you have an illness and you just, like a gastro, or it could be over-exercising. So they often do blur, because although it's very interesting in my case, so my whole life I glorified being thin. I thought that would be the answer to all of my problems. And I really tried hard to restrict and get to the typical look of what anorexia is, which, by the way, you can be anorexic but of normal body weight. So I think the disservice that the terminology has for anorexia is that it implies a specific phenotype, so a specific body look. But you can still be even overweight and be anorexic if you're actively anorexically neurosic. I don't know if that's a word, but if you're still trying to suppress your appetite purposefully, that is still what I would consider you're anorexic. Yeah. So the bulimia implies an actual purge of some kind, and it can be different kinds, but we'll stick with the typical vomiting. And then anorexia is like just the suppression of restricting your food, your appetite.
And then the human aspect of what people are going through would lean the conversation towards the nervosis side. I mean, we're looking at a lot of family systems, your history. Yeah. We're looking at societal pressure. We're looking at all sorts of, even epigenetic, all sorts of layers to what causes your physiological addiction to a process that comes from a mental identity being adopted. I'm kind of like trying to figure this out as I talk to you, but I would imagine that society has created imagery and people want to gravitate towards these images. That's part of it.
It's part of it.
Then it goes in a whole other direction, which I'm sure you're going to elaborate on. I mean, the question that I want to ask you is, at what point were you having a conversation where you knew you had to hide something from other people that loved you? Because that's a part of this conversation, really.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've always been such an open book and such an open person. And I think starting therapy from such a young age, I always wanted to get better. I never wanted to feel so anxious all the time. So I really I just entrusted any therapist, any physician that I went to, and I was really like as open as possible. But yeah, as you alluded to, eating disorders, just like addictions, are very secretive illnesses. And it's interesting with me because I kind of didn't want to really hide it. But I suppose what I wanted to say earlier is that I started with trying to restrict my food, but I wasn't always super successful because I was really hungry. I was a very active girl. I love sports. And I would go through like restriction and then like getting so hungry, then I would binge and then I would restrict it, like this binge purge cycle essentially. But when I figured out that I could make myself purge, it was around the time that I started taking antidepressants. Then it turned into full-blown bulimia for many, many years. And in the space, I know this is just so crude, but just being real, they often say that bulimics are failed anorexics. So I was actively bulimic, but because I wasn't, again, typically anorexic, even though I was psychologically, but maybe not necessarily physiologically, I was quote unquote normal weight. I was still actively trying to lose weight all the time.
You look normal because you're cultivating an identity that you are happy with, but the process of getting you there involved a much more nefarious background process.
Oh yeah.
So that's why people were noticed. It's not like you were suddenly emaciated, rake thin. If people could come up to you and say you are way too thin, you were normal looking, but going through something at the time.
Yeah.
But then there's a journny.
Oh yeah. And I would actually say that my whole life I've been going through that thing. On the outside, everything looked really great. I got straight A's. I was like friends with all the popular people at school. I had a loving family. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but on the inside was a completely different story. Like it, and oftentimes to this day, it's still like it's a mind F. That it's like inside can feel so like you're dying, but then on the outside it looks super chilled. Yeah.
Jump quickly all the way to how bad it got. Tell me how bad did this get?
Well, it obviously got to a point where I eventually weighed 24 kilograms.
From a weight of?
Like I would say like 52, 54.
What was happening when you were 24 kilograms?
I was in and out of hospitals. I don't know. The body's resilient. The body's really, really resilient, but I can tell you it felt like death. And it feels like death. You know, I've never identified that I'm suicidal in any way, but if I think about it, like, well, you know.
I can't imagine how difficult that is. I mean, having a loving family is the hard part. I think the emotion that I'm seeing on you is because you realize how much love there was around you, and yet you were going down a rabbit hole that seemed unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say that I've been in recovery for about 8 years. Actually, this would be my 8th year that I was last. In this month, I was discharged from my last clinic admission, but I kind of feel like I got wiped out. I got like knocked in the head unconscious, and it's like taken 8 years just to be able to like sit up again. I'm still trying to, again, figure it all out. And I think that's also why I want to be here today, because online it's very easy to just think, again, on the outside, it's very easy for all of us to just look at anyone and think, oh, they're good, their life is together. But we're all human. None of us are immune to the human experience. And we all have our struggles and our demons. And I think I would love to, even if it's just a small part in this world, to hopefully make someone feel like they're not alone.
You felt a certain way. How did that start, and then how did it finally break? Where did you actually find the moment to be able to involve people who had no idea? What I'm seeing in the real world is that there's a lot of suppression and hiding.
Yeah.
And there are confidants or co-conspirators, if you can call them that understand to a point, but they're also on a journey of strange self-determination that's been passed into them from some medium. So what was it? What was the start, and when did you feel the need to involve people that love you?
When I became bulimic, I didn't want anyone to know. That's when I became very secretive, because I kind of felt at the time that I'd like figured out the hack. I can eat whatever I want as long as I just purge, but I didn't want anyone to know that. I was always an open book. And of course, my parents knew that they were taking me to therapy pretty much twice a week sometimes for years.
So they think that they're doing right by you. Not that there was a problem,
yes,
but by having you in therapy, as parents, they're thinking that this is a safe space for you to grow because you've got an outlet.
Yeah, and this is the convention. This is what you're meant to do if someone's anxious. And again, I was always an anxious kid, so that wasn't novel. I didn't really care about like hiding that. It was when I became bulimic that I wanted to hide it. And then, eventually I remember I was just having dinner with my family. I was still in school, must have been matric. So if I started it was 2 years into being actively bulimic. My older brother, because the bathroom that I used to go purge in was right underneath his bedroom. And I didn't know this, but he could hear me. And I remember like we were just eating dinner, and my older brother just made a comment about like, oh yeah, well, I can hear you purge. And then I really wanted to keep it from my mom. She was the person I didn't want her to know, because my mom and I we're like this. But that didn't really stop me. I still, where there's a will, there's a way.
So even after that moment, that was nowhere near the low point from a biological health perspective, your own personal health journey. You had, now those that loved you knew. How long after that moment did you get to a place where I think you're speaking from a point of post-event knowledge, where you were past this? How long was that journey?
Yeah, I would say my breaking when I started recovery was about 8 years ago. So from 2013 to 2018.
It just
got
really bad. So that's, everybody knew, and despite everyone knowing it, there was still a 5-year journey. So now I need to ask you, how come? What is it about this that makes it so persistent? Makes it, in your words, you've called it an addiction.
Yeah. It is a progressive illness. One thing I always say, because often I get lots of parents or people reaching out for help. They always ask, okay, how long is it going to take? You can't put a time frame to any of this. As much as we want to, you can't, because there is this deeper metaphysical journey underplay. Like, you have to want recovery. And I'm not even perfect now. There are so many times, it's like I kind of have to go in circles, and I have to, whatever you resist persistent, even though I've always had the hindsight, I've always had the knowledge, I know exactly what's happening, but yet something inside of me it takes a while to like get there. So where therapy is amazing it helped me flourish this ability to psychoanalyze myself and intellectualize myself. But recovery is not intellectualizing and speaking. Recovery is actually doing and being. And David Cho has this amazing quote that I love, and he says, the longest journey that you'll ever take is from your head to your heart. I think this is, if no one knew this, but anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric illness. And it likely has that so because you're literally in a medical crisis when you're that lower body weight. The body is the most amazing, amazing complex entity. It's almost like how is this so perfect? It's very quick to stabilize once you start biological repair, but it's not super quick for the brain and the neural wiring to rewire itself. And I think that's where it probably has the highest mortality rate, because the body's quick to rebound to a healthier place, but the mind takes a very long time.
Let's just touch on that for a bit, because what I'm hearing is that you would be qualified to speak on behalf of a wider group of people that have gone through this. I'm hearing that so much of this is mental decisions, mental building of systems, mental adhesion to these now fully adopted mental ideas. You talked about anxiety, but if you would speak outside of yourself broadly, what do you think some of the patterns are across most people that go very far into the addiction of bulimia? What would be the pattern of the start point? Is it society? Are you looking outward and saying, I don't look like that? Is it a personal dialogue? What is the spark that kicks this off?
It is kind of a myth that it's only society as the cause of error. Of course, again, human experience, what we're exposed to, everyone wants to be worthy and feel good and safe in the world. But I mean, eating disorders have been, or specifically anorexia, has been spoken about since like the early 14th century. So it's not necessarily, I very much view the world now through an ancestral lens, because we share the same physiologies and DNA as our hunter-gatherer ancestors. And so our bodies thus expect the same, results. But biologically speaking, I've come to understand, and again, this is a very loose hypothesis because we still don't fully know. We still don't fully understand everything. So it's all very much speculation, but through an ancestral lens, there was a specific wiring in the brain that would be advantageous for us as a human species trying to evolve and live and survive, to be able to restrict food intake, because we would often be in times of famine where there wasn't any food back in the day. And those who were able to have that specific neuroplasticity to change and get through famine survived. So there is an evolutionarily advantageous component to the specific neural wiring of the brain that we see in anorexia nervosa specifically. But you put that innate biological advantage in the modern world and it's exacerbated.
We're trying to understand the difference in biology and physiology and then societal mental addictions. And you've got a very clear point on this to make. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah. So I'll start with the biology, because essentially that's, I'm going to split it up into science, not that psychology is not science, but just hard fact science versus the human experience psychology. Biologically speaking, we are human beings. We have biology that, responds the way that it always should, depending on your environment in which you're in. Back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers and there would be times of famine, it would be advantageous for people who were able to get through the famine. And again, a very loose hypothesis. This is kind of under the realm of the ancestral / evolutionary, but not evolution in a religious sense, just evolution, change over time, the human species evolving. Evolutionary understanding of anorexia nervosa specifically. And in a time of famine, the body's resilient. So those who are predisposed to this it becomes maladaptive in the modern sense, but this neuroplasticity, which just refers to a rewiring of the brain, regarding any diagnosis, specifically in the mental health space, it's promising because the brain is neuroplastic. You could be diagnosed with something that you can totally heal, you can totally recover, you can totally rewire the brain. But biologically speaking, the sort of typical phenotype, there would be a maladaptive rewiring of the brain during times of famine. And again, famine is a stress response for people. And that stress response, speaking back to we're all bio-individual, we're unique beings, manifests in different ways. So what I wanted to just say regarding the biological aspect of our very brief, short, small understanding of anorexia nervosa is that there's a specific sort of wiring of the brain. And I actually think that there's very much a crossover between the neural wiring of OCD, eating disorders, and addiction. I think there's much more interplay, and I think kind of siloing them as separate things is a little bit there's a bigger picture. And I think to zoom out is actually quite helpful in that regard. So in those who are genetically predisposed to that specific rewiring of the brain, those is what I've come to understand will be people who have something like anorexia nervosa or addiction or OCD. In fact, there's an amazing professor who kind of specialized in OCD, the family friend / even I think distant relative of ours. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but he actually right in the beginning, he's a world-renowned professor specializing in specifically the pharmaceutical interventions for OCD. He told my parents what Kelsey has had her whole life is actually OCD. And again, this is just a loose thought. I'm not attaching to any of these. These are just all helpful hypotheses. Maybe it resonates with some people. We still, again, it's all speculation. We don't fully know.
What was their name?
His name is Professor Dan Stein.
Okay.
And when I say OCD, obviously the connotation to that is just like cleanliness, but it's not. It's more specifically relating to this almost like a ruminatory mind, a mind that is really quick to like latch onto things and kind of have this like obsessive compulsion, this like looping. So in my work with my studies with nutrition and health optimization, and this kind of differs to the conventional understanding of, well, how conventional medicine is practiced, is that what functional medicine does, for example, is it takes a diagnosis or whatever the symptoms that someone is presenting, and it goes, okay, what is the root cause? Because nothing just comes out of nowhere. Like, I didn't ask myself to have anorexia nervosa. Like, there's always, I love Freud, like there's always a reason behind something, manifesting. So I really love that sort of logic to play with when it comes to healing and recovering, not only of mental health issues, but also physical health issues. Okay, well, why? Like, what is the root cause of your type 2 diabetes? Because there's a reason. It doesn't just happen. It happens over time because the body's always responding the way it should. To go back to your original question, like, there's a biological sort of construct. And when I speak about biological, I'm most referring to the neural chemistry of the brain and how there's like a specific like neural, different parts of the brain have been observed to be very much highly like almost on overdrive when it comes to looking at people with anorexia, even OCD, addiction. But then also on a biological aspect, I can't deny, because it's been such a game changer with me, just relating to the nutrition space, is that inflammation is a huge driver for all chronic disease and illness. And my life looked perfect. I genuinely, logically have had no reason to have struggled in my life, which pulls me towards, and there's an amazing psychiatrist, a Harvard psychiatrist called Dr. Christopher Palmer. I've been very inspired by his work. He's kind of brought together like this unifying concept of mental health disease stemming from mitochondrial dysfunction. So basically cellular inflammation. And so in my case, where I didn't have this like big T trauma happen to me, which is very common in people, which is kind of like an inciting incident for a lot of people's eating disorders or addiction or whatever to occur. Again, I don't want to gaslight myself either. Of course, I've had traumatic incidences in my life. We don't come out of this life unscathed, none of us. But I didn't have this like big event that then caused me to become anorexic. I've always just known anxiety. And for me, the root of, anxiety kind of then eventually manifested into eating disorders. But that, as opposed to situational anxiety or depression, like, God forbid, the death of a loved one, or again, a really terrible traumatic incident, I had this unexplained anxiety from the get-go. And that really is why, in hindsight, I've really been almost taken aback by this almost biological understanding of mental health, because unfortunately we've compartmentalized the body completely. You cannot separate the mind from the body.
What I'm learning more and more is that their epigenetics, the deeper level of understanding of physiology, biology, do play a massive part.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of people that are being affected superficially now. And I want to segue into that space and open the floor to that discussion of how a lot of people are doing this purely for the physiological look or the mental addiction to a look.
Which is still true.
Yes.
I agree with you completely. And that is, from a human perspective, what drove me. But I can't deny the fact that the minute I changed my diet, the quality of my thoughts changed. And so that's what I wanted to just preface and really give context regarding, it's not healthy to have really self-inflicting, painful thoughts about yourself in the world. And again, it's unexplained in my case, and I think in a lot of people's as well, and hopefully someone resonates with this. I hope they feel less alone. But what I wanted to also say, like on an inflammatory level, I had major IBS issues most of my life. And again, the brain and the gut have this symbiotic relationship. In fact, I would think that the gut is actually the first brain, because the gut is the thing in our body. I mean, it's inside of our body, but technically it's outside of our body, because that's the only thing that gets exposed to the outside world.
I'm a firm believer in this expression, trust your gut.
Yeah,
it's a
100%.
Colloquial societal expression,
100%.
but ultimately science is saying here and then now we've got to look here and we've got to make a link.
Yeah. So what I wanted to just say in that, like, if you're having inflammation, which I mean, I don't know who isn't having any inflammatory response right now, just because with the world in which we live in, and I don't say this to bring about fear, but we're living in a toxic world with xenoestrogens and air pollution and the food that we're eating. I mean, it's not really food, it's just processed junk. That's inflammatory for the body. And there was a lot
that's going to exacerbate, right? So that's exacerbating any predisposition, any situational traumatic event that arrives. It's just going to ramp it all up.
Exactly. So this is why I'm super outspoken about the physiology now, because it was a dietary intervention in 2018 that literally saved my life. And it actually gave me life back, because if I look at before that intervention, I wasn't alive. I was not alive.
Would it be accurate to say that you were going through a disease? Is it a disease? I wanted to get the terminology right.
I don't like that word. I don't, because it implies that you're sick. The body is always responding the way it should to whatever inputs it's receiving.
But then inflammation is the root of so many diseases.
Yeah, it is a disease. I know. Right. We're arguing semantics of just the negative connotation of the word disease.
Right.
But essentially, I was a massive inflammatory response.
Right. So, I mean, I like the idea that the word dis-ease. The body is in a state of dis-ease.
Yeah.
And inflammation is going to do that.
Yeah.
So let's go to the rubber where I'm trying to cover some ground, is that once you get past the biology, once you get past the mental and the societal, there's an actual human family moment that's unfolding. Mm-hmm. If I'd known this at this stage, and if I'd known this at this stage, this would have been different. And certain outcomes could have been avoided. So guide us through the sort of family, societal journey of how to treat this and what you would say to people to do differently.
Yeah. It's a really good question, and I'm going to try to put as much as I can into it. So I was in the standard of care for 20 plus years. My parents thought that they were helping me, but I just was left. I mean, I went to every specialist physician under the sun. I went to neurologists, endocrinologists, biokineticists, gynecologists. Like, I've tried every medication. I even went for MRI and CAT scans to see if there was something structurally wrong with my brain.
Wow.
We entrusted the medical conventional paradigm. And I'm not bashing them, because there's a time and a place. I mean, thank God that we have something like an antibiotic. Thank God we have emergency care. That's where modern medicine really, really thrives. But when it comes to chronic dis-ease, it's not helping. I mean, most people are on, it's called polypharmacy, multiple medications. That I would argue is not health. So going back to your question.
You're looking at yourself in the mirror, but it's a time warp. There you are.
Yeah.
And you can fast forward through that moment all the way till recovery. What would you tell the people that are going to see their daughter, their son go through a journey like yours? What would you tell them now?
So I think where the conventional mental health, specifically the conventional eating disorder paradigm, goes wrong is that they just look at the mind only. The whole paradigm is built on this assumption and this premise that your mental health issues are your fault, and that it's your inability to be stoic or resilient in the world. And I would argue I disagree until we've ruled out all the lifestyle things. I tried every medication. I went to all the top physicians in Cape Town, South Africa, and not one of them asked me, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you moving your body? What is your what are your relationships like? Okay, maybe psychotherapy kind of touched that. Not one person asked that. And it's funny, because if you go to a vet, if you take your sick pet to a vet, what is the first question they ask?
What do they eat?
Yeah. And so until those things are ruled out, there's no point in getting to the mind. When I changed my diet, when I took away all the inflammatory things that were causing such neural and gut inflammation, my quality of my thoughts changed. And yes, I still struggle a lot, but I have the resilience, and I would take it a step further. I have the cellular resilience, because my cells are no longer as inflamed, to be able to then apply my 20 plus years of psychotherapy I don't need to go to a psychologist anymore. I can get through. I'm resilient now because my cells are resilient. And this is where I love using the word reverse engineering mental health.
What is that?
Reverse engineering mental health. So when you reverse engineer something, you like start from your goal, essentially. You go outward in, reverse engineering mental health. That term that I'm going to say I coined because I haven't really heard anyone else say it, so I'm going to take credit. But it was inspired by Dr. Daniel Amen, who's another psychiatrist. And he has this amazing analogy where he likens the human body, so the physiology, to the hardware of a computer, and then the human psychology to the software of a computer. How can you expect the software to be functioning optimally if the hardware is beaten and battered?
Right.
And so that's why I think someone struggling, specifically mental health-wise, biological repair needs to be done first, because you'll find that you may not even need the crazy amounts of hours of psychotherapy harping on one little or two little things, psychoanalyzing yourself, when the body knows what it needs to do. When you get out of its way, it will heal.
When I first was exposed to the idea of anorexia and bulimia, the stereotype at that time, or at least the story that was told, is that you are seeking an image that is something that might not be attainable.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of demystification that has to happen around some of the stresses. People are taking a drug to suppress their appetite. People are looking online and seeing imagery, and that's feeding them every day that they doom scroll. They're just seeing something that's not them, but they want that. There is a psychological, modern societal, like heavy blanket that's been thrown more and more over us. Would you agree? Or
100%. You can't take away the human experience and societal, the environment in which we live in. We're tired. We're overwhelmed, and we're absolutely overstimulated. We still share the same physiologies as our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Our bodies are not designed for this overstimulation. We wouldn't have known more than whoever was in our tribe, in our community. So our brains still sharing the same physiologies, bodies. We haven't evolved to this environment. And I think this is why we have a massive outbreak of chronic disease, because the further that we get from our natural state and what our bodies require, the sicker we're going to become.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that there is a slow move, because I don't think people can carry on like this anymore. It's so easy to get sucked up. It's so easy to live life from top up. But like, as cliche as it sounds, you only have one home in this world, and that's your body. And you can only control yourself. And again, it's not sexy. It's not as sexy as taking Ozempic, but it's the basics at the end of the day, you know?
What are your thoughts of that wave of Ozempic that's in our society right now? What are your thoughts on that?
So I always love to have a very liberal outlook on things. I really like to weigh up the pros and the cons. For certain people, it's clearly really helpful. For the very overweight, type 2 diabetic, insulin-resistant person, it can be a really great move to help kick things in the right direction. And
what does that imply?
What does that imply? We don't need to be healthy because we're deficient in whatever Ozempic is given us, touted to give us. Pharmaceuticals, even herbal supplements, anything that you put into your body has a reaction, has a biochemical reaction. And specifically with pharmaceuticals, there's always side effects. And I think people, I don't want to speak in absolutes. I also can only speak for myself. I've become very averse to anything that's not necessarily natural. Again, time and place for medications, absolutely. I've taken pharmaceutical drugs for sure, right, when I've really needed it, because they've been really helpful. But when it's something like...
when it's used to maintain a certain process that you become addicted to.
Yeah.
Is that happening?
It's definitely happening. It's a sexy idea to just take a pill and you can lose weight.
Right.
But what that denies people is this deeper spiritual journey of that weight loss journey, if that's what they need to be, doing. I would, as much as it's been the hardest 29 years of my life, it's only what I've known, when I reframe it, I'm so grateful because I've been able to go through this journey. And I think taking a quick fix denies you of that beautiful metaphysical spiritual journey that is again, I mean, as much as I'm evidence-based, I'm not evidence-bound. There's so much that science cannot explain, and I don't think could ever explain. In order to change, you need to change. And when someone goes on this journey of turning within and trying to improve themselves and get healthy and just reach their full potential, there's undeniably a deeper journey at play. And that is such, like, probably one of the most beautiful investments that one could ever take, to turn within and go on this journey, no matter how hard it is. Our bodies, again, are so smart. They know, we have this innate intuition, these like primitive instincts. They know what to do. And it's all very well that I say, you know, I'm sure there's someone out there listening like, oh, it's all very well that you're saying this now. But no, I genuinely believe that, like, your body knows what it needs to do. And when you're eating the right diet, you shouldn't ever feel hungry. Our body makes GLP-1s naturally, endogenously. In fact, protein is actually nature's GLP-1. It all comes to hunger and satiety. And again, when you're eating the right diet, you're going to be satiated. And I just fear, I mean, the side effects alone are just absolutely horrific. And people are rebounding. It's no similar to just severe calorie restriction. And I would argue that's really unhealthy. That's the recipe, what I went through. It's hormonal suppression. It is hair falling out. It is brittle bones. I mean, I fractured my pelvis while just running. Like, the body is not meant to be not eating food. I mean, hunger and eating is like one of being a human and any animal, and human and animals' greatest thing. Like, every animal needs to eat. And of course, there's like deep-rooted is like, okay, I would, psychologically speaking, okay, let's get to the root of, you know, why you feel like you need to be severely underweight. And again, I'm not saying everyone using GLP-1s is trying to get underweight. I'm speaking now to the people who are maybe like, they've got like 5-10 pounds to lose, and then they get onto Ozempic because we're deficient in whatever Ozempic is given us, touted to give us. Pharmaceuticals, even herbal supplements, anything that you put into your body has a reaction, has a biochemical reaction. And specifically with pharmaceuticals, there's always side effects. And I was put on antidepressants specifically. And initially they were okay. I did find some benefit for sure. There's a metabolic effect with these antidepressants. It's not the only effect. Again, I don't even think we fully know exactly what's happening with these medications because it's very hard to tell exactly what's happening all at once at the same time. But there is no denying that there is a metabolic impact once you start taking these antidepressants. It's a very, very common thing for people to gain weight, for example. So I was first put on antidepressants when I was 16. At age 18, I went into my first clinic, but it wasn't for an eating disorder, even though I was actively bulimic. It was the general psychiatric clinic, and the psychiatrist at the time put me in there because she wanted to change over my medications, which can be a really hectic thing. Within the span of 3 weeks, I kid you not, I gained 15 kilograms. And for anyone with or without an eating disorder, that was traumatic. That was the incident from that day that I think that was everything that I would do from that moment was to lose weight. I said that you can
Quick point.
Yeah.
You're actively now saying that through your medical treatment process, not necessarily relating to eating disorder, it made your eating disorder, it made bulimia worse.
Oh yeah, and anorexia spiraled.
And you're going through that in silence still because nobody knew about your eating disorder at that point?
My psychiatrist knew. And apparently, a relative of mine, she's a forensic psychologist, and when I told, like, in hindsight, again, speaking about like my past experiences, she said the medication that psychiatrist put me on is known. Like, it's known to cause weight gain. And the psychiatrist still put me on it. I was purging in the clinic. Like, under
psychiatric observation.
Yes, I was in my own devices.
From that.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, also when I was on those medications, if I missed one day, I lost all sense of motor, like neural control. I was on a tour with school and we went on a hike, and that day I forgot my one pole, and I nearly fell off the mountain. Like, from that moment I weaned myself off of that medication, like, absolutely. But isn't that a red flag? We're just we're taking it like candy nowadays.
They are seemingly overprescribed. What would be first step towards recovery?
Yeah. Well, in those states, it's very difficult because it's almost like there's a switch that turns on, and I've identified it's either a specific texture of food. So there's this amazing woman, I can't credit her because I forgot her name, but it's not my work. She's identified specific foods that are triggers for binging and then purging. Of course, high sugar foods. I mean, dopamine hit 101. Who doesn't like the taste of, chocolate cake or whatever? What I want to say is that the brain almost quickly gets really hijacked. Addiction is actually more about not the whatever the drug is, could even be sugar or exercise. It's about the brain's response to that. And why I'm saying this is because it's very, very difficult when your brain has been triggered to that, to get yourself out of there. Like nothing, no one, you almost become possessed. And it's emotionally exhausting going through it, because you know what you're doing. You're watching yourself from a bird's eye view, but you cannot stop yourself. It's exhausting.
Is it true that people have equated it to being more addictive than things like heroin?
So eating disorders are often spoken about in the same light as addiction. However, unlike heroin or cigarettes or alcohol, you can throw those away. You can't throw away your body, and you can't not eat. And so that's why it is very complicated. The neural pathways are so entrenched and difficult. And there's not one thing that I can say to someone that's going to be the cure-all for a bulimic episode. But what I can say, I go back to David Cho again. He's narrowed it down to the word HALT, HALT. H, hungry, A, angry, L, lonely, and T, tired. Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And I know that if I'm hungry, I'm very likely gonna binge and purge. I know if I'm angry, another trigger, like loneliness, tired, those are all for not only eating disorders, but for addiction. So, being in check with yourself, constantly evaluating yourself, being very in tune with your body. Okay, today I woke up feeling quite tired. I should probably take it a little easy. The recovery is in listening to that intuition. The recovery is in honoring what your body is actually signaling to you, because our symptoms are actually gifts. They're gifts from our body to guide us. Okay, what next best should we do to make ourselves feel a little bit better? So the recovery is time and time for the rest of your life, making sure you're honoring your biology, what your body is asking for. Now, that's a very long journey to even become attuned with your body. Oh, I woke up, oh, my throat's a little bit scratchy. Oh, maybe the next best thing should be to go have a hot, beverage. That may soothe me. Or I'm hungry right now, and in my context, we'll speak about carnivore. I feel like I really want some extra butter. But no, the eating disorder is too scared of some extra butter. It's too many calories. And so I deny myself that, but then I get really, really hungry. And then eventually later down the line, I binge and I purge. But if I had honored what my intuition was telling me in that moment, I would have prevented that. So it's exposure therapy, essentially, through the lens of OCD, because you do eventually have to expose yourself to then make your nervous system feel like it's okay and safe to then deal with whatever is the OCD component of things. It's similar to eating disorders. And I would say that the crux is being brave enough to listen to that, and not only listen, because it's actually, most of us know what we actually want, but we don't honor that because we're scared, we're shamed if I'm too hungry compared to someone else. So that's, for me, the crux of healing. So if you can, whatever it may look like, is it breathing? Is it going for a walk? Is it calling a friend? I mean, I'm going to shout out my best friend. She's a safe person. And I know it's very easy to say that you need to find a safe person, but I cannot tell you how that is everything, to be able to have a safe person.
You're alluding to this idea that there isn't a medical intervention that costs money that's going to be that spark for you. We were talking about this in between our sessions today, that it's actually not about money and someone throwing a pill at you. It's about understanding how to begin the journey of doing the work, of seeing yourself and your body in the fullness of what it's capable of doing without medication.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, we touched on Ozempic and how the medical industry is trying to throw solutions at these kinds of problems. What are your thoughts on the fact that you someone who's deeply into recovery would say that it's not a cost issue?
The funny thing is that they literally cost nothing. It costs nothing to get sunlight and be outdoors and call a friend. And okay, maybe it will cost, food, for example, we have to feed ourselves, but it doesn't cost to go for a walk. It doesn't cost to hug or pet like a dog for oxytocin. It doesn't. A lot of these things are so low cost or zero cost, and you don't need to be wealthy. I will never forget this. I went to a life coach in the midst of my anorexia, yet another relapse, and he worded it so well. He said, Kelsey, if you're unable to nourish your authenticity, how do you expect to nourish yourself on a purely physiological level?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, its purpose is such a big driver for me. You know, I can't really get out of bed without some sort of compass heading that says, today I'm useful. That would be a good way to ask, like, where's hope in this?
The recovery is when you choose that every second of the day. Because, again, it's all very well going to an hour or a 90-minute therapy session in a very contained environment, but the recovery is back home when you're stuck alone in your head. And my hope for this world is that, I mean, the eating disorder treatment, again, going back to the fact that anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric illness, the conventional paradigm is seemingly efficacious for some, but it's failing most. And my dream is that with more understanding and more conversations about opening up with no matter what the icky, uncomfortable, shameful thoughts that you're having, my dream is to see a world and a reality where we can bypass the terrors, because recovery is also terrifying. It's all very well like hunky-dory, yes, I'm going to heal, I'm going to find serenity. It's almost like a slap in the face as to like why you've already struggled with an eating disorder, bulimia, anorexia, whatever. You've already struggled so much in your life. And now, especially in the context of anorexia nervosa, where you have to literally do the thing that you fear the most, gaining weight, it's almost unfair. Like, why do I have to suffer even more now when I've already suffered so much? And I'm still trying to understand it. I don't have answers about, like, again, the cause of era of anorexia, but my hope is that we continue to find more understanding, because unlike something like type 2 diabetes, it's very in the know-how now. A low carbohydrate diet really can reverse that. We don't quite yet have that for, I would say, a lot of mental health issues. Of course, again, a ketogenic diet, for example, massive amounts of research with that, and it helped me. I went on a carnivore diet. But my hope is, again, this other that's taken 8 years and I'm still struggling, that other piece that we can't quite yet define or understand by science. I hope that I'm alive for a reality where we can help speed fast this recovery process and actually get sustainable recovery, because most people are dying.
So give us a North Star. You're sitting here, you look amazing, you're putting out so much work in the space. So how would you encourage the community?
Major in the basics of life, and it's not sexy, especially first thing in the morning. It's your circadian rhythm, it's the sleep, it's the passion, it's the purpose, it's the meaning, it's the nutrition, it's the movement. Like, we are the same physiological human beings as the hunter-gatherer ancestors, and the further we've strayed away from our natural state, the sicker we've become. And again, it's not a quick pill. It's not a quick fix at all. I mean, as I said right in the top, it's taken me 8 years just to feel like I'm sitting up now from being like knocked unconscious. And I know that I can't speak for everyone, but I'm just going to, for the sake of getting my point across, just say that I think, especially for girls, other movies and what we've been fed to in the modern world, there's a lot of shame around girls being hungry and wanting more food. And that in and of itself is shameful. And so what happens is girls are trying, and again, it could be guys as well, but I was trying to suppress my hunger so much that I got so hungry, and then I ate, but then I needed more food. I was starving. The brain was doing exactly what it needed to do. It was hungry, it needed food. And so it drives you to eat, and you almost become possessed, and then you binge, and then you feel so guilty, so shameful for eating so much. Oh my gosh, I'm repulsed. I need to go purge to relieve that and just feel, quote unquote, okay and safe in the world. And there's a lot of shame. In my regard, I think there's a lot of shame because I have this idea that girls shouldn't be hungry, they shouldn't eat too much. And so when I really wanted more food and my body was telling me I wanted more food, I felt ashamed compared to anyone else. And I was like, oh no, I need to get this out of me. I need to get this food out of me right now. I'm gross. No one's going to like me. I mean, insert, the monkey mind.
So what I'm picking up on is that you've gone on this journey through a whole bunch of medical spaces, psychological spaces, and gained a lot of hindsight knowledge. Do you open your door to consultation to help young people or parents, families, that just might be a first step towards helping people understand what they're going through? Do you do that?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely one of my passions and purposes in this life, to be someone that someone can reach out to, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So parents
As well.
They can sit there and they think they've seen something. And my next question is, what are some of the red flags? But if they were to spot a red flag, they can know to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we need to make sure is that people understand that there's someone that's gone through this that they can reach out to and consult with.
Yeah. I mean, the person struggling, and of course parents as well. And my parents are also very outspoken, and if they need also from a parent's perspective, I can also arrange that. But yeah, absolutely. Parents and people who are struggling can definitely reach out.
So what are some of the red flags? Parents and friends, because you mentioned the importance of friends.
Loved ones, yeah.
Loved ones. What are some of the red flags that we should be looking out for?
Well, I think if someone, again, it's going to be so nuanced depending on the context, but I'm going to try to be as general as possible. But like, if you have known and grown up with someone who's, a certain way, and then all of a sudden there's quite a big change in their just state of being, essentially. Maybe they're a little bit more secretive, or they're not doing the things that they used to enjoy. I'll use, again, an example of me. One of the first things everyone knows me for my music. Like, I grew up Kelsey and music and singing and playing, and that was me. And when I became really, really sick, I wasn't even able to listen to music, like let alone play or sing. I literally became mute, and that was like a big red flag. Like, that's so unlike Kelsey. I mean, up and above any physiological changes too, like rapid weight loss, or if you even, with bulimia as well, of course, it's devastating to the esophagus and the vocal, like it's devastating. And which is also like just so tragic that also happened with me, because I was a singer and my voice really got affected. Specifically with bulimia, there's a lot of swelling in the face, especially post-purge. So you want to look out for what they're doing after they're eating. Specifically, if they're getting up from the table and going somewhere, that's definitely a red flag. In fact, when in any eating disorder clinic or hospital that I was in, like, I was monitored. Like, you weren't allowed to leave the table after a certain number of time, and you actually, in those clinics, you can't go to the bathroom alone.
What would you say to people that are going through that I'm alone in that shame? A little spark that you could offer up if you were to put yourself in that position of no one could ever know, no one should ever know about what I'm doing. What would you insert into that moment if you could just whisper into their ear?
I'm with you. You're not alone. And this is why I think I really wanted to come here today and share this, because if I've not heard it from clients, I've thought it myself. These horrible, icky, messy feelings. And I hope that by me sharing this will just help like one person know that they're really not alone. They're not alone.